Welcome to Book Babble, I'm Dustin, and today we're talking about The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. The story of Henrietta Lacks is a very, very sad tale. Henrietta Lacks was a young black woman who was dying of cancer back in 1951. Scientists, without her knowledge or consent, took some of her cancer cells and began using them in experiments. Those cancer cells that they took from her ended up turning into a multi-million-dollar operation. Now, this is a story that really made me mad, and I hope that when you read it, that it also makes you mad, because it is just an awful story. Not only were they profiting off of the cancer cells of this poor young black woman, none of her family knew that this happened. In fact, Henrietta Lacks sort of blipped out of history and became just essentially what she was known in science labs as the HeLa cells. Now, Henrietta Lacks' cancer cells were something of an anomaly. They kept regenerating, and so scientists could actually keep using them in experiments. In fact, HeLa cells are being used to this day. The HeLa cells have been instrumental in a lot of medical breakthroughs over time, and we owe it to ourselves to read Henrietta's story. The HeLa cells were actually shot into space. Rebecca Skloot was not a family member. She was a science student who got very curious. Rebecca Skloot actually goes out and tries to investigate. She tries to get in contact with members of Henrietta's family who obviously are very skeptical. They didn't want another person profiteering off of their poor dead mother. It's just a really sad story, because here you are, you've got this poor black woman who gets taken advantage of because she is a poor black woman. You know, and you have to really think about this. This was 1950, where segregation was just still a everyday occurrence. And I would hope that a situation like this wouldn't happen in today's society. This story was such a heartbreaking story. When I finished reading it, I immediately made that one of my staff picks at work. And I encourage people to keep reading it. Anyone who's looking for a really interesting story, I always brought them over to Henrietta Lacks. I think that it's important that we share this story as much as possible. Henrietta Lacks was taken advantage of, and I think it's time that we pay respects to her. I'm glad to report that it is actually getting turned into a movie. I know Oprah Winfrey is involved in the project. I hope that more people are encouraged to read about this story. Racism is still a very prevalent problem. Here in Canada, it's not necessarily racism towards black people, but we have been very awful and continue to be awful to our Indigenous people. And that kind of takes light, especially in this year, because this is Canada's 150th year as a country. And a lot of Indigenous people in Canada are very upset by people celebrating this, because they are celebrating us taking their land away from them. And while I am so thankful for the time period that I am born into, I do realize that there's a lot of work that we still need to do. Telling stories like Henrietta Lacks's is paramount in us looking forward and continue our journey to being better human beings. I really think this is an important story, and it's something that I really encourage you to go out and pick up. I originally listened to the book as an audio, and what inspired me to actually film this video was finding this beautiful copy at a thrift store the other day while I was out and about. We owe a lot to Henrietta Lacks, and the most important thing we can do is continue to make sure that her story is being told. And Rebecca Skloot does such a fantastic job of telling her story. Please, if you do get a chance, go out and grab a copy of this book. And when you read it, I hope that you get as much out of it as I did. I'd love to know, have you read it? What are your thoughts on this book? Do you have any other books like this that I should be reading? I would love to find more stories like this so I can read them and do my part while I'm at work, encouraging others. So for me, I hope your day is just tickety-boo. I'll see you soon.